Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gaming and Leisure Voice. Today, we are going to be talking about Kubernetes, hybrid cloud evolution, containerized infrastructure. It's all that really fun stuff that's under the covers in IT. I want to introduce you to Dan Ciruli. We had a conversation earlier about the closeness of the name to my childhood friend. But Dan, you're the VP, General Manager of Nutanix Cloud Native Division.
That
Is that
is
right?
that is correct. It makes it sound important when you say it that way, Leslie.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me today.
Welcome aboard. And you're a former Googler, so you're a Zoogler, right?
Yes, I think you're pronouncing that properly, although it's something I see written all the time, not pronounced. But yes, I worked at Google for a little over 7 years, from 20 end of 2012, beginning of 2013, through part of 2020.
All the way up to that's when I started.
Yeah.
I'm a Zoogler as well. I actually started 2 weeks after the worldwide shutdown on the pandemic
Oh,
in April of 2020. And unfortunately, no longer with Google. I think I would have stayed there till the end of my career. I absolutely loved it.
I
But
thought I might for a while, but ended up choosing a different path. But I was there for some fun times because I was there
you,
before Google Cloud. Like when I got there, I worked in what we called technical infrastructure at the time. There was no Google Cloud, and Google
no,
Cloud
there
happened while I
wasn't.
was there, so it was
Oh,
fun to
I
see
just
that
hit a
happen.
weird button. Sorry. I hope that didn't come through. Yes, so I got hired on to sell Google Cloud.
Hmm.
And in Las Vegas, which is where I'm at, talk about swimming upstream. They were late to the game, but they came in strong.
Yeah, they certainly one of the things that in retrospect, I think everybody when people will write books for a generation about how Google and IBM and Microsoft and Oracle collectively let a bookstore in Seattle beat them to the cloud. It is pretty shocking when you think about it that way, right?
Yeah, it really is. Well, we're not going to talk about Google all day, although I could.
No.
I have so many stories. I want to highlight your background. You're a Kubernetes guy, right?
Yeah, at Google, my team built, so I was there before Google Cloud, before Kubernetes, and before Google had really turned its attention to open source. When I got there, technical infrastructure, we built the products that Google used to build its products, right? The things that Gmail was based on, the thing that Google Maps was based on, that search, ads, docs, all of those were based on a set of, databases, networking technologies, container management technologies. And so after Google realized, hey, we're missing the boat on cloud. We've got to
Uh-huh.
start building commercial products. They said, okay, let's think about how we build these things in commercial land and sell them, and also realized that open source was going to be a key part. Part of the reason open source was important was because we were so far behind. You can't get
Yeah.
people to standardize on a third place product. You can get them to standardize on an open source product. And so that really led the move to Kubernetes happening. And my team built API and service mesh infrastructure at Google. So then we turned to
Oh,
do that
wow.
in open source. And I was one of the founders of the Open API initiative. And I sat on the steering committee for the Istio project. And I worked on gRPC, a remote communication protocol. So it was really, as Google looked at, like, okay, now we're in third place. What do we do? And it turned out to be a great move, was start building things in open source and get adoption that way, and then use those to create commercial products.
You talk about bringing back memories. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That was kind of my talk track. It's like, listen, do you want to work with the people who actually built it?
Right. Yeah. Because Amazon
Yeah,
wasn't
it's
inventing stuff
crazy.
like that, right? Yeah.
I ended up, a lot of BigQuery though. That's
Hmm.
analytics and such, and it was a really good gig. You're at Nutanix now though.
That's
So what is D2IQ? And that's how you got to Nutanix?
that is how I got to Nutanix. Yeah. So I had left Google because I wanted to go someplace that I felt like I could have a bigger personal impact on, frankly, the stock price, the bottom line. And that
Yeah.
and my travels led me to D2IQ, a company formerly known and probably better known as Mesosphere.
Oh yeah.
Mesosphere,
Okay.
Mesos was an original project older than Kubernetes that was, built on doing container orchestration. And they had when Google open sourced Kubernetes and the market moved to Kubernetes, the company rebuilt their product on Kubernetes, renamed the product, and then brought me in to lead product management. At that company, we subsequently got acquired by Nutanix. So I've been there for about 2.5 years.
Oh,
And
okay.
our goal is to take some of these open source technologies, and the innovation in open source is amazing.
It is.
Really what's gone on there is incredible. I can go in depth about that and the effect it's had on innovation. But it can be hard for enterprise to adopt. And what we're doing at Nutanix and in my group especially is trying to take these tools that are built in open source and put enough automation around them so that they're really usable by people in enterprise, by people in commercial companies who are like, hey, I don't really care about open source. I just need to get my job done. I need to deploy
Right.
this application. I need to compete against my competitor who's shipping features faster than me. And so now what we're focused on doing is doing, and of course, building a business around that.
And building a business. It's funny. I liken open source to you're going to say, "Wow, this is a leap." The Voice. You go on The Voice and you're this unknown singer, and you open your mouth, and all of a sudden this melody comes out and it blows everybody away. But you don't have the wherewithal to get into the game. The same with open source. You have all these bright minds and they develop such amazing stuff, but how do they get it out to the world? That's
Hmm.
so anyway, that's my weird leap of open source to The Voice.
I like it. I like it.
And you're on a new venture now. I hear you are a podcast host yourself, and I love the name. I owe you an explanation with the I/O. That's pretty cool. Um,
I owe you an explanation. You want to know something funny is we used AI to generate like 100 names and it ended up choosing one that a human came up with. People are still more clever than AI. Yeah. It's fun. Like I'm the last person on earth to get a podcast, I think. And we're trying to make it, I think you will know exactly having been there ahead of me. It's to try and make something that's interesting. It isn't a commercial for a product or a company because we don't want to do that. And
right.
what we do is with each episode, take on a technology that we hear about pretty frequently, but a very small percentage of people actually understand well. Bring in an expert and have them it's not explain it to me like I'm five, but explain it to me like I'm someone in tech who doesn't know anything about that technology
Yeah.
effectively,
Yeah.
right? And it's kind of fun. I'm really enjoying it.
It really is, and you have no idea what you'll learn. It's amazing. And the people that I've met, the conversations I've had. I mean, sometimes we go off on tangents. I had one podcast. We went off on a hour and a half long tangent, and I finally said, "You know what? I'm not even going to try to control this podcast anymore. We're just going to talk." It was,
It's fun.
and
And
then,
one thing I have found in my career is that you find people who are experts at technology, and there are some who they start talking and it's esoteric and you can't understand what they're talking about. But there are some people, and these are the ones I'm shooting for guests, who are very, very good at breaking it down, explaining it in concepts that everyone can understand. And
yeah.
you walk out the other end, not being an expert, but having a good grounding. And that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to do is, by the way, I'm lucky enough. I sometimes call myself the Forrest Gump of product management because I have just wandered into like I worked with that important person. I worked with that famous person. I got to, just really privileged how, he kept stumbling into the White House and across Elvis and everything. I feel like I've had the same career. So what I'm trying to do is kind of bring some of those people back and say, hey, impart some of that wisdom that
I
was so
like
helpful
it.
to me on a subject that you know more about than just about anyone on earth. And so it's fun. We're just 3 or 4 months into it, and starting to hit a groove, I think.
I think that's amazing. And getting through the whole point of one, hearing yourself, two, seeing yourself, uh, talking to yourself in an empty room with a dot on the screen so you focus at the camera. It's
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
those fun things behind the scenes that people don't realize goes on. Or like I just did, I hit a button. I'm like, oh well, we'll just keep it in there.
Right. And and then seeing what happens after as it goes into because we have editors and they do their magic and they make me look far more professional than I am, I can assure you.
I love it. Well, I say we move on. Let's talk about Nutanix a little bit. You've been there 2.5 years, you said.
Hmm.
And wow, I want to say our careers have not parallelized each other. That's a mouthful. But Nutanix, I used to compete with Nutanix. I sold VX Rails and
Oh yeah.
hyperconverged and converged
Hmm.
infrastructure and all of that for Dell and VCE and you name it back in the day. But and Nutanix it has always been, the one that I came up against. And if you had to, let's look back at Nutanix. Now, I know you weren't there in 2011, but that's when they really became a force on the market. And if you look at their mission in 2011 versus what they're doing today, in their core philosophy, what hasn't changed, regardless of the market? Does
I will say what hasn't changed. The core philosophy is pretty interesting because it's not tech related at all. The core philosophy at Nutanix is around customer satisfaction. I've never been at a large company that cares so deeply about making customers satisfied. And it's very interesting because the technology has changed somewhat, a lot of additions. I mean, really, the core technology hasn't changed, but so much more is based on it now. They've done acquisitions, they've done this and that. But from the time you get here, if there's one thing that they kind of say philosophically is to obsess about our customers' success. It's pretty interesting. Now, in terms of technology, the core technology that hasn't changed is really they looked at the way the storage industry was evolving and they looked at state of the art for storage. And state of the art for storage at the time was vSAN, was attached storage. You spent money, millions of dollars from a
Oh yeah.
storage vendor, and you bought storage. And they looked at the modern way of doing storage, pioneered among others, but notably because where one of the founders came from, was at Google, which was Google did not buy attached storage. They didn't go spend tens of
Right.
millions or hundreds of millions of dollars for DMC. They bought commodity Linux boxes and they solved through software how to turn all those hard drives and all those boxes into what felt like enterprise grade storage and what scaled very well. What scaled as you added more nodes, you got more storage, et cetera. And they said, hey, we can turn that into a product. There's no reason you have to use some computers for compute and some computers for storage. You could do all that with one thing is if you write the software right. And so that decision to like, hey, let's build a company that does. And by the way, then they called it hyperconverged because those same computers that are doing the storage, you can run the workloads there, right? And
Exactly.
originally that was done with VMware, but it was the same. You weren't buying separate racks. You weren't going to HP, back in the day, if you were going to build an internet company in 2004 or 2007, you would have spent a couple $1 million at EMC for storage, a couple $1 million at HP, which was a thing back then before
Oh yeah.
HPE, for compute, and then you would have spent a couple $1 million at Cisco for networking. Company like Google built the world's like most scalable performance software ever, and they didn't do any of that. They bought commodity Linux boxes, stacked them up, and they solved all that through software. And that's really, I think, of the pioneer of hyper-converged infrastructure was Google. It wasn't a product they sold back then. They built stuff on it. So Nutanix was built on that. At first they started with storage. Later they added their own hypervisor. So they went from being, VMware's number one partner to VMware's number one competitor in the era when you were there,
Oh
right?
yeah.
VMware got into hyper-converged as well, saying, hey, this is a good way to do it. And since then, we've added a database as a service. We added in container management because it turns out new applications aren't being written to go into VMs, they're being written to go into containers. So they added us and, added a bunch of security, added and as a pure software moved from it just runs in on-prem to it can run anywhere. It can run in the cloud, it can run on a ship, it can run in a vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, so you kind of went into my next question because the perception today is that hyperconverged is like legacy VMs. It's so passe and old fashioned. But with Kubernetes, how is Nutanix like bridging that divide? Because Kubernetes is cloud native, HCI is legacy, but it's really not.
Yeah, it is, and I would say that what we're going to see over the next 10, probably 20 years is a coexistence in every enterprise, in every company of software that's running VMs and software that's running in containers.
Yeah,
Um, VMs aren't going away. Just like mainframes never went away, right? Once you write a piece of software and put it into production, it stays there
exactly.
for decades, literally. And so, yes, the new stuff is being written to go into containers because it's easier to scale, because it's easier to deploy, because really, frankly, because you can move faster when you're deploying that way. But
Yeah,
the vast majority of what's been written over the last not just the last 20 years, the last 40 years has been written to run. We didn't have VMs back then. It was just running on a server. But a VM is just to the software, it feels like a server, right? But we've got
right.
almost 40 years of history of stuff that runs that way. Now, all the new stuff, including everything that's being written for AI, is written in this new way, in this containerized way. What we're trying to do is have a platform that can run both of those very adeptly, natively, actually. So you've got VMs, we'll give you a hypervisor that competes with the very best hypervisors on earth. You have containerized applications, we can run those in the best way. And maybe that's in Kubernetes in a VM, which is very, very common, or Kubernetes on what we call bare metal nodes. So we're just
Yeah.
trying to make sure that we build a platform that includes everything that enterprises need to run their applications, whether they're containerized or not, depending whether they need block storage or object storage, file storage, it doesn't matter, and whether they need to run it on-prem or in the cloud. So
And and
really
and
gone from
that's
storage
that's
to a platform.
actually sorry to interrupt, but that's actually where Nutanix really wants to go. Is kind of this dual native, wherever it runs, we'll run it kind of situation. Yeah,
And yeah, we see that more and more commonly for different reasons around the world. It's very interesting. Um, we saw for a while people really wanted to be able to move to the cloud. Some companies moving 100% to the cloud. A couple things are pushing them away from that now. The bills, first of all, it's very expensive to
yeah,
run in the cloud,
yeah,
and people are realizing renting is more expensive than buying, right?
yeah,
Um, there are often legal reasons, and we see legal reasons in Europe where they're saying, "Hey, we need the data needs to stay in our
yeah. The
country, or
GDPR
the
rules. Yeah,
company who owns the servers has to be from our country." But even in the United States, in your industry, right, we've had customers say we need a data center in 50 states because of state rules. And so we need to be able to, by the way, we're also going to run some stuff in the cloud, and we might have one primary data center. So how can you help us with that, right? It's like some data needs to go everywhere. Some data needs to stay in one place. An application needs to get deployed in multiple places. So having a platform that can help out in those situations is
well,
going
and
to be.
and the lineage of the data, who's touched it, where has it been touched? It's funny. I go back to security, and I think about my analogy here is the Target breach of years and years ago. It wasn't Target that got breached; it was one of their vendors that got breached,
Mhm.
and they came in through the back door. And the same thing with data in multiple countries, et cetera. Who is getting to that data? Who's touching it? Where do they come from? How did they get there? It really complicates the business world to try to run as efficiently as possible. So having this dual native where they can manage that, I'm sure is it's a plus. It has to be, some kind of a godsend for uh, or IT folks throughout the industry.
Right. And we're the thing is, as disparate as things are, as like people run in different more and more environments, we're going to see more of that, not less. Even in the last year, think about things that have happened. One is the AI explosion is happening, and
Yeah.
now that people are starting to engage in what they're calling neo clouds, right? Which is essentially it's a cloud vendor, but it's not one of the big three or four. It's one that's specializing just in AI workloads. So now they're going to have to think about, well, how do I extend that, take advantage of that? The other thing that AI is pushing things to do is it's pushing applications, more and more data collection and more what they call inference at the edge, which means
Uh-huh.
apps running, like one example is a fast food restaurant that was using AI in the production of food. Like, how do we know if these nuggets are done? Right, with visual inspection. Well, you can't
Yeah,
be sending that data to the cloud for analysis. That needs to happen there, right?
exactly.
Certainly, again, something that's happening in gaming. Absolutely, is there image analysis that needs to happen very rapidly within the confines of a casino? Sure. The pitch analysis that happens on every pitch in a baseball game, whether it's a major league baseball stadium, a minor league baseball stadium, they've got Kubernetes clusters running in each of those things because they've got to do that data analysis right there. So
Right
this
then.
AI stuff is really pushing more stuff to the cloud, but it's pushing more stuff to the edge, and it's meaning we're running more workloads in the data centers as well.
And that's interesting because bridging from platforms, VMs, containers, AI is all we hear anymore, right? It's the biggest thing driving container adoption, I think, because of the analysis that you can throw on there. And the phrase is always bring the compute to the data, don't bring the data to the compute. Um, so why is running AI containers right next to where the data is so important? Is it that speed of the ball analysis, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was lucky enough at probably 25 years ago or so. I was at a startup that was a grid computing startup, and we worked with Jim Gray, who was a Microsoft scholar who came up with that. He was one of those people who could take very complicated concepts and boil them down. He's the first one to say, bring the compute to the data. And
Yeah,
and and the fact is, like for that pitch analysis, it's something like 80 gigs of data that they capture per pitch, right? They've got cameras and radars all over the
crazy.
stadium.
Yeah,
And to simply move that to the cloud before providing the broadcast with the, hey, it was a strike, it was outside, that in itself takes too much time. And so that's the reason, we're going to see this more and more as we do facial recognition, which, can make it a breeze to get through an airport. But again, you have to be doing that stuff locally. You have to be doing it securely. It's the only way to do it. And as more and more of us are gathering 4K video, 4K cameras are that big, right? That
yeah.
it's you, think about the ethical thing, aside from all the ethical issues, even if you're dealing with everything ethically, it's just going to happen. And so
I know.
we need ways to do it. Now, you said, it is AI is probably the strongest thing that is pushing people to containers. That probably is true. But the reason is just that AI is leading to an explosion in applications. And all the new applications are being built to run in containers, and all the AI applications are new. So yes, like that is true. AI is making an explosion of applications, and yes, they're all running in containers, which will mean they're easier to upgrade, they're easier to scale, they're easier to everything really going forward.
But okay, so it's easy to spin them up, it's easy to scale, but now managing that. Let's talk about that a little bit. I got this great idea, I wrote this app, blah, blah, blah. It's wonderful. Now day two, now I have to keep it running. How do what's the biggest gotcha that comes with all of that? And, I would think that, oh gosh, I don't even know what the biggest gotcha would be. I, how I don't even know where to go with this one, but scaling on demand is there, managing your pipelines. Um, I
So
mean, it just starts
the,
getting complex, and I think it goes back to there we go. It goes back to where is the data? What are your local laws? Who's touching it? I mean, we've kind of come full circle on this, but the more we add Your 4K videos, right? The more data we add, the more complex it gets to be managing all of this.
Sure, I think that's true. If you get, let's flash back to 2004 again, right? Flash
Oh
down
my.
to the time when Google was really innovating, and I talked about what they did in terms of storage. And what they did in terms of storage, by the way, is they invented distributed storage. They invented a flavor of distributed storage. It wasn't the first implementation, but basically what it did was when any piece of software wrote any data, it automatically got written across multiple nodes. Right?
Right.
They were just buying commodity Linux nodes. And the reason they did that was that
Striking. Yeah.
so when any of those nodes failed, and they were just commodity Linux, cheap hardware, the data still persisted because it had been written multiple times, right? At the same time, they pioneered, and they were pioneering this, the use of containers. And when an application got deployed, it got deployed in a container, and it automatically got deployed across multiple nodes. So again, when any of the nodes failed, the app was still up and running, right?
Right.
From 2000 probably four on, the way you test your internet connection is you go to google.com because you know it's always up, right? So at a time when other
Got to get
people
it
were
out of
spending
cache first, though. Otherwise, it'll
you
take
might have to
forever.
clear your cache. There could be a DNS problem, but that's how you start your check. So it's pretty interesting. The other thing that they did around that, so they had this, tremendous advantages. They built so much automation into
Yeah,
how things got deployed, and what really that enabled them to do is, yeah, they created the most scalable, performant software Earth had ever seen, most resilient software Earth had ever seen. But they also, of course, they innovated search, right? And in rapid succession, think about what they did. Think about what the internet was like before Google. Think about what Hotmail was like with a 10 megabyte attachment limit. What
oh my God.
maps were like at MapQuest. What Word was like. And think about how one company went and innovated. MapQuest wasn't competing with Yahoo, wasn't competing with Hotmail, wasn't competing with Microsoft Office. One company took all them on and beat them. And the reason that happened was because they were able to innovate so quickly because they were using containers and no one else was, right? So when everything is automated, your developers move more quickly.
They
And
do.
that's fundamentally the thing that is changed in this. Now, you asked what's the biggest hurdle? Biggest hurdle is that whole everything I just described is different than the way software was written for 40 years. And
Mhm.
the people that have run the infrastructure that has been running software for 40 years.
Yes.
VMs happened, but they were just a way to deal with more of a thing you were really familiar with. They weren't really a change. Virtual machines felt like you were logging into a machine. Um, Containers don't feel that way. And so it is more of an education. Part of it is we in enterprise making it easier to use open source, certainly, so that it's not just a re-education, but we make these things easier. But it is fundamentally new, right? It is fundamentally different than the way things were run in VMs.
Well, we have to go to a commercial break, but it's funny. My brain went there as you started going to it. We're dealing with so we have companies like Google and all the startups that are doing containers and they're doing agile development and fail fast and boom, and they're knocking this stuff out. And then you take something like that and you go to a traditional enterprise and they say, "Oh, well, we've got to do waterfall technology, waterfall techniques to roll out this update or whatever." And it's like, well, you just knocked it all in its head, and we're never going to get anywhere. So
Right, right.
slows it down. Um, we need to take a quick break, everyone. We will be back in a few minutes. And we have a little game that we're going to play. This is the second podcast that I've done a game of sorts. So I am eager to get everybody's feedback, but we will see you in a few minutes and we'll do our halftime game. Agilysys helps the gaming industry realize its full potential through exceptional technology that goes beyond what other tech providers have trained hospitality to expect. We built our state-of-the-art hospitality-focused software for continuous innovation, industry-leading data sharing, maximum flexibility for best-of-breed performance, and smooth ecosystem integration, and an always learning guest profile engine so you can create personal experiences. It's time for hospitality to go beyond with technology from Agilicis. All right,
Okay.
everyone, we're back. We are going to do our mid-show halftime game. And the title of this game, are you ready for this, Dan? Um, is it a tech buzzword or is it an indie band?
I love it. I
Okay,
love it.
so what we're going to do is since some of it's around Kubernetes, not all of it, but you're a tech guy. So naming conventions in the tech world are notoriously wild. So I want you to guess if it's a tool or if it's an indie band.
All right. I'm ready.
And the first one is, let me get our timer going here. The name is Argo CD.
That is definitely an open source project.
Ah, he's good, and he did it. He is good. Oh, and the prize is you get to brag. That's it. You just get
Yes.
this. You can put it on your podcast. Okay, the next one is Fantagram.
Fantagram, I'm going to go indie band.
It is they're an
Yeah.
electronic rock indie band, but hey, they could be a visualization tool
For sure. I
for
was not sure
mapping
about
out
that one at all.
topologies. That's all I could.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're good. I should have gotten harder questions. Prometheus.
Could be either, but I'm going to go open source.
Yep, good guess. It
Yep.
is a monitoring system. All right. The Postal Service.
Definitely an indie band. I know that one.
You know that one.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, I tried to get you there. A trick question. You're good. Oh, he's going to get to brag, everybody. Uh, all right. Kubi Monkey.
That's got to be open source.
It is. It's a
Yes.
chaos engineering tool for Kubernetes.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
All right. And the last one is car seat headrest.
Car seat headrest sounds like an auto part, but we'll go indie band on that one.
It is an indie band, but I thought it sounded like a CLI tool. Cool. Well, so now we all know our tech tools and our indie bands.
I
You
can't wait
you
to tell my
got
teenagers.
100%, man. That's pretty good.
Nice.
Oh, goodness. Oh, and it plugged up my nose. You made me laugh so hard. Oh,
Well, I'll take the blame for that one. Maybe you should see a QB monkey about that.
yes, exactly. We need something with doctor in it. I'll have to look up some of those. Oh, anyway, so let's get on to serious subjects. Empowering the developers, security, oversight, all of this open source, Kubernetes, moving fast and, our wild naming conventions. So, how does Nutanix change that narrative so that it doesn't slow things down, but you can still, move fast? You know,
So the thing is that adopting Kubernetes isn't necessarily easy for the team that it has to run the infrastructure. The team that's told, hey, you've got to learn what a Kubernetes cluster is and keep your cluster healthy and your applications healthy. But for the developer, the container is really, really nice. You put a piece of code in a container, you can deploy that, and it's going to run on any computer the same way. And that was always a problem in the past. When I
it
was working
was.
in, we were works on my machine was a really common thing. And the reason is that you would deploy onto a server, and there's different libraries running on that server. There's an operating system that may or may not have the same kernel that you have. All kinds of things can be different that end up making it so it's very difficult to do kind of automated, repeatable deployments. And the thing about a container is it wraps up the code very nicely so that you can, it's the same on my developer machine as it is in the automated testing pipeline as it is when it's running in production. And so, from the developer perspective, this should be a move that is really, really welcome. The question is how much automation gets built around it so that it is as easy as possible for them to run. And that also goes for
Right.
the other people, in the people running the Kubernetes clusters, how much automation exists for them. If they're doing this themselves, if they are installing and upgrading Kubernetes by themselves, if they're figuring out how to solve security problems by themselves, it can be very difficult. In fact, my friend Kelsey Hightower wrote a book on just installing Kubernetes. He called it Kubernetes the hard way, right? When
Yeah.
you get great automation, Kubernetes is easy. It's the reason that you sold so much GKE, I'm guessing, and Amazon sells so much EKS and
Yep.
Azure AKS because when all the automation is there, it becomes much easier. So the real key is using automation everywhere that you can, whether it's for the team that is writing the code and just, automated from the point they do that code check in and the code gets merged in, everything from then on should be automated. The build, the testing, the ultimate deploy to production, all of that. If you can get automation all there, you make everyone's life much, much easier and you make the company move faster.
And you make the company move faster. But that automation, as we talked about in the break, I'm selling security now. Um, Security first is a key thing. I mean, the breaches are everywhere. With that automation and kind of like that pre-configured workflow, not a workflow, but we'll just stick with automation. How does that enhance or detract from the security first, the shifting
Ah,
left to
ah,
security?
that's a great question. When you do it well, when security is done well, and you know this as well as I do, it's easier than doing something in an insecure way. If it, and again,
Or as an
probably
afterthought?
the most secure place I ever worked was Google.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when you do a deployment on prod Google, things like is the traffic going to be encrypted at rest? I mean, in transit, it's automatic. You don't
Right.
ask any developer team to do anything. It's built into the infrastructure. By default, it's zero trust networking. No one has access to anything by default. But the developer doesn't have to do anything to protect their code, right? It just happens that way. So you can do the same thing using these open source components, right? You can make it so that there's a service mesh that's automatically deployed in every Kubernetes cluster, and automatically MTLS is on when you deploy a service, so that you have authentication, authorization, and encryption in transit automatically. If you tell a developer, "Hey, figure out how to encrypt all your traffic in transit," well, that's going to be rough. It's going to slow them down. Some people will get it wrong. You'll end up with breaches. If you build a system so that when someone does a containerized deployment, whatever needs to happen, whether it's a sidecar or
Right.
you're using an eBPF related way to do this, when you build it so it happens automatically, you make your developers move faster and you get more secure. And so that philosophy is really that happens at every layer of the stack. The way you make things secure is you make security the easiest way to do things. You design a very secure, very automated way to do things, automate as much as you can. Then customers will want to run. I mean, your
Right.
developers will want to run in a secure way. And that's really the key. That was really that philosophy that I picked up at Google was really like, no, make it that this is the easy and obvious way, and then people will do it.
Well, and they don't have to think twice about it. And Nutanix, they're kind of taking on that philosophy with where they're going with this dual environment.
Right. Yeah. We have the tools now. Now we're doing something a little bit. We don't have one customer. At Google, there was only one customer. The Google developer, when we were building IT at Google, Google was our only customer, right? And we could say,
Right.
this is how you have to do it. It's a little bit different in Nutanix because we sell to a variety of different, some the biggest governments on earth to small businesses to large enterprises. And so we sell to our, the IT departments, and then they're all going to build something that's a little bit different. Something that works at Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines is different than what that works for the U.S. government is different than what works for TireRack.com, for example.
Yeah.
But we give them the pieces so that they can build the right solution for them. We give them the right automation. We believe automation around everything. It's very, very important. All of it is very important, and the tools to encrypt things in transit if you want to. Everything's
Okay.
encrypted at rest automatically. Um, and give them the policy constructs they can. So every enterprise is going to end up with a slightly different platform, but giving the IT departments the right tools to be able to build the right platform for their company is really critical.
And to govern that as they move forward, because build the tool and put it out there, but now you have to patch it, you have to update it, you have to upgrade it, and there's a whole going back to the process of 40 years ago, this waterfall life cycle of, oh, you want to do an upgrade? No, it's going to take us 6 months because we have to do this and that. You can't do that now. You have to be able to get it out there. And I think I'm speaking correctly here when I say Nutanix is moving to make sure that that automation is there so that not only are you getting it out there quickly, but you're keeping it up to date and maintained and rolled out with all the latest changes that an enterprise would want.
Yeah, the ability to upgrade is really important. I talked about automation for getting like new code out there. Um, One thing that's true right now, and this is truer than ever in the age of AI, is that vulnerabilities happen all the time. People find vulnerabilities in existing code,
Oh
and the
yeah,
best, and whether you're talking about operating systems or web servers or Kubernetes, which is now part of that kind of middleware stack. Um, the best defense against being hit by one of those vulnerabilities is to keep your systems up to date.
yep.
When there's a new vulnerability discovered in an operating system or in a Kubernetes or in a web server, log4j logging mechanism, right?
Log
The
4J, yeah, I
people who the
remember.
people who end up getting hit are the ones who haven't done an upgrade in 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years. So just because you were running this code and it was safe at one point doesn't mean it's always going to be safe. The best thing that you can do. So I talked about automation to make the developers more productive. This is automation to keep your systems, everything from the operating system up more up to date and secure is by having really easy to upgrade software. That's another thing I talked about before, the design principles at Nutanix. Easy upgrades is
Easy.
something that they
Yeah.
have really focused on from the beginning. They wanted it to be like upgrading an app on a smartphone. And it's not quite that easy, I will say. But compared to where, as you said, when it used to be 6 months, yeah, I was at EMC software and Documentum. Yeah, people want
A
would
book
want
this thick.
that's right. And yeah, plan on a 6 month project to do that upgrade. You can't do that nowadays. You just can't.
Or the fact that people are like, oh, we don't want to be the first to do it because what if the upgrade has a bug in it? And it's like, oh my goodness, you can't take that risk now. You can get
Mhm.
attacked in a second. There was just a breach a couple days ago, and the breach hit like 70,000 customers, but it's only because they never updated their product. It is like,
Right, right.
you can lead a horse to water, but
Yep.
at that point you have to have the discipline inside your organization to be able to roll that out. And I think where Nutanix is going with the easy upgrades, the easier you make it, the more they'll do it.
Absolutely. I remember back in the Google days talking to a GKE customer, and it was a retail store, and so at night they were in North America only. At night, no one was using the systems, and the guy said we used to uh, we used to get up literally in the middle of the night to do our upgrades. That's what we would do.
Yeah.
We'd plan on, when it was a new Kubernetes every 4 months, we would get up in the middle of the night and upgrade our GKE clusters. He said, then I realized we never had a problem. He said, now I will be in a meeting in the middle of the day, and I'm like, oh, there's a new version. Boop, click the button because
Yeah.
he trusted it. When people trust your upgrade, they want to do your upgrade. It's
That's
it's
right.
you know for 2 decades we in enterprise software, and I'm pointing the finger at myself because I was writing some of it. We in enterprise software had given enterprise buyers a bad feeling about upgrades, and now as an industry we have to A, get much better about it, and then B,
Right.
convince the customers, no, this is actually better. You'll get the new features, but just as important, even if you're happy with the feature set you have, you'll get the most secure version of what we
Yeah, any
produce.
vulnerabilities have been addressed that we know of today. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, so heading into some takeaways here, and I think I know your answer because I'm learning a lot about you, and I'm actually very honored to be able to do this. I'm going to have to thank Katie profusely for this podcast. But key takeaway, if you had a final piece of advice for enterprise leaders, um, and they're trying the shift, right? They're trying to shift to containerization. They have to live in this hyper-converged world, this hybrid cloud and on-premise world. And now we have AI ready. If you had any advice to give them, what would you offer?
It's hard to narrow it down to one silver bullet. I will say that automation is the key.
Yeah,
Automation will make if you're having anyone at all who's writing software in your company, making that process automatable. And by the way, in the age of AI, every company is going to have that. Be clear.
yeah,
Automation is the key to making those people productive. It's also the key to making your operations people, the people who are tasked with running it. So I think automating the golden path is by far the best thing you can do. So whether that's for the team who needs to deploy new storage, the team that needs to deploy a new Kubernetes cluster, the team that's just making a change to an application that's running somewhere. The more automation is in place, the more you can make sure that it's smooth, the more you can make sure that it's secure.
yeah.
And in all likelihood, the more you can make substantial changes. I knew a company that had really good automation and they moved from on-prem to the cloud without their developers knowing or caring because they had so much automation behind what's going on. And so it really is the number one thing I think you can
Well,
do.
and
Um,
and, and I think it helps eliminate the human error.
right.
It
Right.
really
Absolutely
does.
it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if there is something wrong, you fix the automation and then it's fixed for everybody.
And exactly. It's all the same across the board. So another thing that I'm adding to the podcast is what I call passing the torch.
Hmm.
And I ask my guest if they had a question for me to give to the next guest. But you are the first one to get the question. And the question that my previous podcast guest wanted to know is, and it's so appropriate. It's almost like you two collaborated. Um, Looking 10 years into the future, what do you think we will look back on and say, I can't believe we used to do it that way?
Oh, that's a great one.
Isn't it great?
Okay, so first I gotta answer that question.
Before you can ask
Um,
yours, yes.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I will say this. Hmm.
It's a tough
Oh,
one.
it is a tough one, and I think I think we're on the cusp of really the way we interact with systems uh changing entirely. I'll say this. I can't believe we used to sit and most of the work we did with computers was with our hand on a mouse and a keyboard.
Good point.
I think we will that will be something, just like I will, talk to my kids about how what the office was like before email, right? Like, can't
Yeah.
believe we used to each have a mailbox that we put those. I think that we will move to that. Oh no, that's how you tell an old computer from a new computer, is that the
Exactly. Well, when you
primary
think
interface.
about, like, okay, so look, think about AI, right? And OpenClaw. You could go to your phone or whatever it is you use to communicate your computer, and you can say, "Tell me about my day. What am I going to be doing?"
Hmm.
Or
Hmm.
set up my meetings for the next week. Why would you have to type them in? That's a really good one.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And it's 2 years old, so it's public knowledge now. But a couple of years ago, when I went to sales kickoff at Google, we had Mercedes there. And the AI integration into the Mercedes models that was coming out, and I believe it's 2026 that it came out. I mean, you could just be driving along and you'd say, "Hey, Mercedes, I need to go to dinner. I've got 5 people. They're tired of the boring thing. Find me something new." And the car will get on the internet and make you an appointment or make you a reservation. And so you're right that we
Yeah.
won't be interacting with a keyboard and such.
Yep. There'll be
I like
some,
it.
but I think most of it won't be, right?
So now your question to my next guest would be,
Will the concept of an app on a phone go away because of AI?
okay,
Will we stop having to install a different app for each bank and a different app for each credit card, a different app for each? Will AI make that so it's irrelevant?
I think you're hitting a big nail on the head there. Uh,
Because it's already changing the way we use the internet for sure.
yeah.
I wonder if apps will go the same way. Because, yeah.
I mean, it's funny with apps, right? Oh, we're going to organize our apps. So now I have, finance and work and and all the apps are in that app. Yeah, that's a good question. That is a good question, and I think they will. But let's see what my next guest has to say about that. And now you just have to listen to the podcast to get the answer.
That's right. I can't wait for that episode.
Oh, we'll keep you posted. So, okay, Nutanix is a supporter of gaming and leisure. And, we have our roundtable every year. We have our security forum every year. Are you going to be joining us for that?
I would have to ask my PR people about that. I don't actually know. That's a great
Okay.
question. I'm
It
often the
would
last to
be
know.
fantastic if we'll get you to Vegas in October or end of September, early October. It's perfect weather. So,
Oh,
where
that's
are
you're
you
right.
out
That's
of, by the way?
that is a great time to visit. I've been there before then.
Yeah. Where are you out of? Are you Northern California?
I am. I'm in Oakland, California. Beautiful Oakland,
Okay.
California.
Good old Silicon-ish. All I
Silicon-ish, right? Yeah, far
Yep.
enough away to enjoy some of the fruits without having to sell my soul to to live there.
$1,000 a square foot, rent out a
Exactly.
garage.
Exactly.
Oh, well, I will make sure that Katie and Jeannie talk to your PR people. Let's see if we can get you out. I think if anything, for our forum, which is in February of every year,
Hmm.
you would be a great speaker, a panelist, somebody really good to have on board. And if we can get you to the round table, there's golf, there's
Oh,
all kinds of stuff. So,
that'd be fantastic. Yeah. We'll figure
okay.
out how we can make that work. I would love it.
Well, I will get the wheels in motion on my side as much as I can.
All right. All right.
So, everyone, I just want to say thank you for sticking with us. Today was a long one, but I think it was a good one. A lot of the things that Dan was mentioning, I think, are very key to staying successful, to staying competitive, and to just be one step ahead of what's going on out there in this technology world. And Dan, thank you for joining. Thank you for being a great guest.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thanks for hosting and thanks for the game. That,
Oh,
that
you're
was a
welcome.
blast.
You get to brag. You got 100%. I guess I'm
Well,
gonna have to make the questions harder when I know, how technical you are. But all right. That's it, everyone. We're gonna wrap this up. I will see you next time and make it a great day while you're out there.